bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We resume now in our liturgy as we come to the Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of the Torah. And this morning, although we are still reading from text rather than Torah, we're going to have an opportunity to see the layout of a Torah scroll as it is presented in the Tikkun, as that captures some of the, in a visual way, some of the meaning of the passage that Rabbi David is going to be taking us through shortly. And it's very fitting that our Torah service this morning begins with the statement, Ein kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai, because that is very much the theme of the song at the sea, the story of the parting of the Sea of Reeds, the miraculous walking through on dry land. Didn't seem to be too muddy despite the recent presence of water on top of it, but it seemed to dry enough that the people could go through safely. But then suddenly it becomes muddy and the waters close in again. And miraculously the people are free. Of course, at Pesach we remember the sadness that we should feel that God's creation is also dying in that moment. And so, as with anything, we try to balance the happiness and joy of freedom or good news for us with a remembrance of the cost that it causes for people. And in some ways, I think those are our feelings as the vaccine is being rolled out and we see hope and optimism on that side. But we also have to exercise care and caution now so that we look after ourselves and each other and prevent the spread of the virus itself, which could lead to many others whom we carried in our thoughts just now, alongside all those we'd named, all those who we know in hospitals and at home are battling this virus and also many other conditions that it's harder to treat precisely because of the virus. And so we join in celebrating God at the start of our Torah service, and then we'll move to the Torah Blessings on page 482. Ein kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kamasecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam vaed, Adonai os le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. And so for this Torah reading, it's an honor and a pleasure to be calling up Morenu Harav David ben Eliakim V'Gittel, our Emeritus Rabbi David Hulbert, for the reading of the Torah this morning.
Thank you, Richard. Before I do the singing, actually, more than reading, I'm going to ask Fiona to read the translation. So, Bob, can you bring up the English translation? Have you got that available?
Blessing first? Or...
Thank you.
Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. They said, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver has he hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my might. He has become my deliverance. This is my God, and I will enshrine him, the God of my ancestors, and I will exalt him. The Lord, the warrior, Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has cast into the sea, and the pick of his officers are drowned in the sea of reeds. The deeps covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power, your right hand, O Lord, shatters the foe. In your great triumph, you break your opponents. You send forth your fury. It consumes them like straw. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The floods stood straight like a wall. The deeps froze in the heart of the sea. The foe said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall have its fill of them. I will bear my sword, my hand shall subdue them. You made your wind blow, the sea covered them, they sank like lead in the majestic waters. Who is like you, Eternal One among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, doing wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your steadfast love, you led the people whom you redeemed. You guided them by your strength to your holy abode. The peoples heard, they trembled. Pangs seized the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom were dismayed. Trembling seized the leaders of Moab. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. Terror and dread fell upon them. By the might of your arm, they became still as a stone, until your people, O Eternal, passed by, until the people whom you acquired crossed over. You brought them in and planted them on the mountain of your own possession, the place, O Eternal, that you made your abode, the sanctuary, O Eternal, that your hands have established. The Eternal will reign forever and ever. When the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and his chariot drivers went into the sea, the Eternal brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Eternal who has triumphed gloriously, who has thrown horse and rider into the sea.
Thank you, Fiona. Now, can we have the Hebrew text, please? And then I'll say the blessings. Thank you. Before I say the blessing, I just want to point out that in the Sefer Torah, as Richard has mentioned, the text is traditionally set out in these, it looks like 3 columns or like bricks on a wall. So you can imagine on one side, on the other side, there's the vertical wall of water, and in the middle, the corridor of mud and floods and puddles as they pass through the middle. And again, this is not a chanting, this is a traditional tune, which I'm sure will be familiar to most of you because you've heard it again and again every single year. So I would invite you to join in, but remain muted. Baruch hu et Adonai ha'mavorach, Baruch Adonai ha'mavorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai Notein HaTorah. Amen. As Yashir Moshe u'bnei Yisrael et hashira hazot l'Adonai, v'yomru leimu, hashira l'Adonai ki galgal, sus v'vokvo rahama v'yam, ozi v'zimnat Vayahi Lishua, Ze'eli Varehu Elohei Avi, Varom Amenhu, Adonai ish milchama, Adonai shlomo. Markavo paro, v'chelo yarav vayam, u'mincha shel isha, tubu b'yam suf, tachamot yechashyamu, yadu b'msalot kamo aven, yamin Adonai, ne'adare b'koach, namin Adonai, Tiratoye, Uvarov Gonaham, Danos Kamecha, Teshalach Hanonecha, Yochalemu Kakash, Uvaruach Pecha, Ne'ermu Mayim, Nitzavu Kamone, Nozlim Kafu Tamot Velevyam, Amoyev, Edov Afsi, Ahalak Shalal, Timlaimu Nafshi, Avi Kabi, Torishemu Yadi, Nashafta Barucha Kasamoyav, Salalu Kaoferet, Amayim Adirim, Michamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Mikamocha Neda B'Kodesh, Norati Lo Osef Elev, Na'atitecha Yamincha, Tivalemu Aretz, Na'chita B'chatztecha, Amzu Ga'alta, Nechalta V'ozecha, El Navei Koshecha, Shamu amim yergezun chelachas yeshkav palashet az nevalu elofei edom elei moav yochazei mura namogu kol yoshbei kan tipol aleihem eimata v'fachat Bigdol Zeroah, Yidmu Kaved Ad Yavo, Amcha Adonai Ad Yavo, Amzu Kanita, Tavaimu Betitaimu, Nachalakha, Machon Leshiftecha, Alta Adonai, Mikdosh Adonai, Konanu Yadecha Adonai Imloch Leolam Va'ed Kivasos Taru V'Richvo U'Afarishav Vayam Vayashav Adonai Alehem Et Mei Hayam U'Venei Yisrael Halachu Vayabasha Batoch Hayam V'Tichach Miriam Hanaviyah Achot achada, et hatof b'yada, v'tzaena kol hanashim acharena, v'tupot, v'tupim u'mivcholot, v'ta'an lahem Miriam, shiru l'Adonai, ki ga'o ga'a, sus v'rochvo, v'ama v'ayam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei l'olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Yesher Koach, Rabbi David, thank you very much. And we come to the Haftarah for this week, which is a second song, this being the Song of Deborah. And we introduced this in our service last week. And we sang at the conclusion of the service, we heard Debbie Friedman singing Deborah's song, so that in some ways that acted as a preview of what we have this morning. And I'm delighted that Michelle Levy is going to read the Haftarah for us, beginning with the blessing that is in front of you on screen. So, Michelle.
We praise you, Eternal One, our God, the Sovereign of the universe. You inspired faithful prophets and took pleasure in the words they spoke in truth. We praise you, O God, for the gift of Torah, your servant Moses, your people of Israel, and people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness.
And we move across to the text, which is from the book of Judges, chapter 5, and we're going to hear the first 12 verses of this chapter that in total is 31 verses. That would be a little bit long for all of us, and some of its content isn't quite fitting for a Shabbat morning, I have to say.
Then Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang on that day, saying, when hair grows long in Israel, when the people offer themselves willingly, praise the Eternal. Listen, kings, hear rulers, to the Eternal I will sing. I will make melody to the Eternal, the God of Israel. Eternal, when you went out from Seir, when you marched from the region of Edom, the earth trembled, and the heavens poured, and the clouds indeed poured water. The mountains quaked before the Eternal, the one of Sinai, before the Eternal, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, caravans ceased, and travellers kept to the byways. The peasantry prospered in Israel, they grew fat on plunder, because you arose, Deborah, arose as a mother in Israel. When new gods were chosen, then war was in the gates. Was shield or spear to be seen among 40,000 in Israel? My heart goes out to the commanders of Israel who offered themselves willingly among the people. Praise the Eternal. Tell of it, you who ride on white donkeys, who sit on saddles, and you who walk by the way, to the sound of musicians at the watering places. There they repeat the triumphs of the Eternal, the victorious rule of the Eternal in Israel. Then down to the gates march the people of the Eternal. Awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, utter a song. Arise, Barak, lead away your captives, O son of Abinoam. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages, the faithful God whose word is deed, whose every word is true and just. For the Torah, for the privilege of worship, for the prophets, and for this Sabbath day, which you, Eternal God, have given us for holiness and rest, for honor and beauty. For all these we offer thanks. May all the living come to praise your name forever. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath.
Thank you, Michelle. Koach, and we wish you many happy memories and long life as well as you remember your mum this week.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite first Sam Dessy and then June Bradbury, and finally, if I could, Peter Calv, to read these three prayers now that follow the Haftarah.
Eternal God, whose dominion embraces the universe, we ask your blessing for our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth, and all the royal family, for those who govern our country, and all who influence the quality of its national life. Make them conscious of their responsibility, and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will. May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excels in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, so that it may be a force for righteousness and peace in the life of humanity.
Eternal God, as you blessed our ancestors in generations past, bless now this congregation, its leaders and its members, and all who enter this virtual synagogue to meet, to study, and to pray. Comfort the sorrowing hearts among us and heal those in anxiety or pain. May we all find here community and friendship, renewal of purpose and hope, a deeper understanding of our heritage, and a sense of your abiding presence. Bless all congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world. Let those who live under oppressive rule soon be freed, and may we all unite to witness to your truth and do your will. Amen.
Eternal God, our rock and redeemer, grant blessing to the state of Israel, created to fulfill an age-old dream and to be a haven for the oppressed. Inspire its leaders and citizens with faithfulness to the aims of its founders, to develop the land for the benefit of all its inhabitants, and to implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice. May they live in harmony with one another and in peace with their neighbors, and cause to come true once more the ancient vision that out of Zion shall go forth Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem.
Thank you all very much. And as we move to the conclusion of this Torah service on page 488, I wonder if, Bob, as you're finding that page, you would also unmute so that you and Di might lead us in the responsive reading on page 488.
God's teaching is perfect.
Reviving the soul,
God's word is unfailing.
making wise the simple,
God's precepts are right.
enlightening the mind,
God's commandments are clear.
enlightening the eyes,
God's doctrine is pure.
enduring forever,
God's guidance is true.
and altogether just.
Behold,
Good doctrine has been given to you. Do not forsake it. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast, and all who cling to it will find happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Help us to return to you, O God, and then we shall return. Renew our days as in the past.
Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem Chadesh yameinu kekedem. Having concluded our Torah service, there is perhaps quite a lot for us to reflect on, and we'll come away from liturgy and think about the sense that we have in the words that we've heard of how easy it is not only to rejoice in what we have, but to seek in the same breath almost to compare and to contrast with what other people are going through. And there is something for me, and I think on this Shabbat what we'll do, I suggest, is pause for a couple of moments, then we'll go into our concluding prayers so that we can make Kiddush with everyone on the stream as well. And then perhaps immediately after we've made Kiddush, as we're running quite early in good time, we can have a few minutes for people to go into breakout rooms and have a Kiddush chat this morning at the end, so that we haven't created an awkwardness with those who are streaming against those who are on Zoom. And so we'll have that time immediately after Kiddush when we've said goodbye to those who are on the stream with us. But for now, I just wanted to pick out the sense that is part very much of the Song of Deborah and also the Song at the Sea is that it's not only celebrating the joy of freedom, but it's rejoicing in the punishment of enemies. And that, of course, creates a very uncomfortable position for us, that we should not only feel that we can rejoice in what we're celebrating, but we feel that we have a need to point out and to also seem to celebrate that bad things are happening to other people at the same time. And I would hope that somewhere we've advanced as civilization in that we can learn how to rejoice in our own success without feeling the need, if you like, to put our thumb and push the other people down. Partly because, let's face it, our success today could be followed by our failure tomorrow, and would we like to be pushed downwards by other people when they're having a better day and we're having a worse one? But also, in the nature of these times, we're realizing that the best way surely to come together through a crisis is by raising up those who are going through difficult times or having bad luck or suffering in whatever way it is, however we might feel in our lesser moments, our less sacred moments, may I suggest, that they're getting their just desserts. Because it's not for us to decide what are just desserts. Those decisions sit with higher powers. What we should be doing is looking to be compassionate at times when other people are going through difficulties, and model a sense that forgiveness and compassion should be part of what we're doing. And against that, I also want to say that shouldn't lead us into a naivety. That shouldn't lead us into a belief that just because we're trying to model that everyone else will do the same. And so we have in some ways to ensure that we are vigilant and alert in our compassion, that we're not, as the accusation is sometimes made, woolly-minded liberals, being from a liberal synagogue, but that we are deliberate, considered, honest, caring, but not trusting in that naive kind of way that says that we expect everyone to do the same thing. We may expect it, we may hope for it, but we're not going to give you opportunities to run rings around us by leaving ourselves open to your manipulations or your abuse or your lies, if that's the way you should choose to be. And that, of course, is a struggle, because it means we have to simultaneously be kind and generous and forgiving, but also we have to be keeping our guard up in an unguarded kind of a way. So we don't want to be closed. We don't want to be carrying a threat around with us, looking like we're constantly bristling, but we're acting nicely. But we need to be on that kind of alert. And it's a skill, I think, that most of us haven't developed, because we fall into this camp of either being nice and expecting everyone else to be nice, or being cynical and expecting everyone else to be cynical. And so how we can find that middle way of being nice and being genuinely nice and kind and caring and compassionate and all those things we know we should be, but also not being naive with it. I think those are the challenges perhaps we need to gain mastery over and share, as they are indeed skills, they are habits that we need to get into, of being able to hold both those senses together. And so I guess my prayer for everyone is that we won't lapse into being cynics or negative or destructive on the one hand, nor naive and leaving ourselves open to being abused on the other. But we'll find that path, that golden thread through the middle. And perhaps that's the middle of the Torah text that Rabbi David sang to us, with a wall on one side and a wall on another, which isn't very healthy, but a path through the middle if we can sustain it, so that we can model a way of being that is robust and is liberal, that is kind and is assertive. And those thoughts might be thoughts that I would encourage you to explore at Kiddush with each other, how we can support each other in developing those sorts of habits that will take us through this crisis in a generous way, in an open-hearted way, and in a way that is robust, calls out falsehood, isn't easily or isn't open to manipulation. And so we can be establishing a more and reinforcing a more robust civic society around us by behaviors that we're working on and helping each other work on to improve. So with all that in mind, I'm going to not talk any longer because that's plenty enough, and we'll move back into the liturgy on page 520, where we come to the Aleinu, the concluding prayers, and of course the Aleinu section. Aleinu literally means it is upon us, it is our duty. The opening word is saying it is our duty, it is incumbent on us to praise God, and in so doing we're hoping to contribute towards that ideal future, that messianic future, where we are all living together in peace and kindness, and that manipulation or negativity or cynicism is somehow dispersed or vanished from the world. Please do join with me on page 520. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינות. And perhaps I could invite now if Caroline Charles would be happy to lead us through the prayer on page 521.
Trusting in you, eternal God, we hope soon to behold the glory of your might, when false gods will vanish from our hearts and idolatry cease forever. Help us to perfect the world by bringing it under your unchallenged rule, when all will invoke your name, relinquish evil, and turn to you alone. May all who dwell on earth come to know that to you every knee must bend and every tongue swear loyalty. Before you, let them humble themselves, and to your glorious name, let them give honour. Let all submit to your sovereign rule. May that time come soon and last forever. For ultimate sovereignty is yours, and to all eternity you will reign in glory. As it is written, the Eternal One shall reign forever.
And it has been said, the eternal God shall rule over all the earth. On that day the eternal God shall be one and known to be one. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. And the third passage on page 522 begins with words from George Eliot's Middlemarch. The growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and who rest in unvisited tombs. Even when they are gone, the departed are with us. They inspire us to live as in their higher moments they themselves sought to live. We remember them now, and in the first month following their death, we particularly remember Arthur Adams, father of Lois Bencher, our member Dorothy Goodman, Hanny Mazar, aunt to Michelle Lester, and Joseph Gondar, related to Steve Fenton. We also remember our members Sylvia Abrahams and Anita Golding, both of whom died on the 8th of January. And we call to mind Rita Bloomfield, the grandmother of our past Cheder head teacher Paul Bloomfield, who died on the 10th of January. We also remember people at the time of their yahrzeit, and so in the coming days we give our thoughts to Bernard Young as he remembers his father Hyman Young, to Michelle Levy with us this morning as she remembers her dear mother Joyce Levy, to Lee Baruch as she joins with her family in remembering Alex Morgan Faber, and with Ray Lissack, who is remembering his aunt Ivy Lissack. And once more, if there are other names that people are recalling at this time, then do please mention them. Peter or Diva, you'd like to name someone?
My cousin's father-in-law, his lawyers on Sunday, Arnold Schneider.
Thank you, Peter, and we send them long life and good health wishes. Melvin and Helen Grant, you'd like to mention someone?
My brother-in-law.
Melvin's brother-in-law, Harold Lewis, who also sadly died on the 8th of January.
I'm so sorry to hear this, and we wish them and you strength at this, the family and you strength at this time. Hava, you'd like to mention for us?
Bob Cafaro, my uncle.
Thank you for mentioning Bob. And Sharon Law, you would like to mention?
Yeah, it was at this sort of time of year, some years ago, but Dorothy Law, John's mum, died.
Thank you, Sharon. We remember her as well, and we also remember Herbert Rosen, Nick Young's grandfather, at this time too. So As we remember them, we pray that their memory will continue to live on in our hearts and that they will be a source of continual blessing. So, Zichronam Livracha, may their memory be a blessing, as I invite those who wish to unmute and join with me in reciting Kaddish so that we can hear the voices of those who are grieving and mourning at this time. Yitgadal,
Yitkadash,
Shemei Rabba,
Madi Bara,
Alma Kibrakirite, V'yamlech Malchute,
Chayechon,
Vayechon Uv'yomechon,
Chayechon,
V'yechol Beit
Beit
Israel,
Israel,
Ba'agala,
Bala
Ba'agala
Uv'zman
Uvizman
Kariv,
Kariv,
V'yimru,
Ve'imru Amen.
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 Yehesh,
Yehei
Shemei
Shemei
Rabba,
Rabba,
Mevorach
Mevorach Le'olam,
Amaya,
Almaya,
Almaya.
Yitbarach,
Yitbarach
V'yishtabach,
V'yishbach,
Ba'a,
V'yitbar,
Mandi,
V'yitbar,
Yitgomam, Yitzei,
Ba,
V'yitadar,
Hadar,
V'yitale,
V'yit'ale,
V'yitpala, Shemei
V'yithalal, Shemei
Tekudsha,
Tekudsha,
Urichu,
Yerichu,
Eila,
Ela, Min
Le'ela
Kol
Min Kol
Birchata,
Bircha,
V'shirata,
Yeshivach,
V'shbachata, V'nechemata,
Racha,
Da,
V'Abraham, V'Alma, V'Imru,
Imru Amen.
Amen.
Eishalama
Amen.
Rabba,
Rabba,
Rabba
Shemaya,
Shemaya,
Chai,
V'chaim Aleinu,
V'chaim Aleinu,
Kol
V'Ko
Yisrael,
Israel,
V'Imru,
Imru Amen.
Amen.
Aseh Shalom Limromam,
Uya,
Uya Aseh
Shalom,
Shalom,
Aleinu, Ve'al Kol
Aleinu V'Ko
Yisrael,
Israel,
Ve'al Kol
V'Kol Ben
Anea,
Adam, Imru Amen.
Amen.
To all those who have recited Kaddish, we wish you long life, many good memories, and much strength. And before we move to a concluding sung blessing on page 530, can we turn to Stuart for the announcements for the community, please?
Thanks, Richard. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Thank you to Fiona and Rabbi Richard and Rabbi David for leading the service this morning. Very moving. Thanks to Ben and Nick for hosting and all who took part. No quiz tomorrow night. We can all rest our brains for a Sunday and get ready for next week's quiz taken by Gary next week. Every weekday morning at 11 a.m. we have our 11s meeting hosted by either June or Gary or both for about 40 minutes of uncensored chat and conversation with tea, coffee or any other drink you'd like to bring along. This coming Thursday at 12:30 lunchtime, Rabbi David will lead a lunch and learn service looking at the wisdom of Barua, I hope I pronounced this right, a woman of the 2nd century, a woman of great wisdom. Next Sunday, as well as the quiz, we begin our Italian kosher cooking course. It starts in the afternoon, details on the website as with everything. And if you want to enroll, please do it as soon as you can. The bumper edition, the real bumper edition of Kosher is available on the update on the website to have a read through now. For those who haven't noticed yet, Amazon Smile and Give As You Like are 2 ways in which we can donate money to the synagogue when we buy things on the internet, which is about the only way we can buy things now. So please, when you go on those sites, if you can register ELELS as your charity, money will be donated by the companies to the synagogue. It doesn't cost anyone anything. And I just want to remind everyone what we wrote in the updates recently about, we know the vaccines are great news and the virus figures, thank God, in our area have been going down as of the last few days. But our way of life is a bit restricted at the moment, and people, including me and everyone, feel down from time to time. Please, if you feel like that, phone in, let someone know, let Rabbi, me, the office, someone know, to have a chat and give what we call a virtual hug, leading perhaps in a few months to a real hug, we never know. So take care, everyone. Wish long life to Michelle and all who mourn, and some comfort. Take care, Shabbat Shalom, And thanks, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We're going to conclude with a sung version of the Yivarechecha at the foot of page 530. I'm going to recommend to everyone, if you are with us via the stream, that you might wish to go and find Debbie Friedman's Miriam's song to add a little commentary to the service you've just experienced, and that expands on those final verses of the Torah portion that Rabbi David read for us. As we're setting up the breakout rooms after Kiddush in a few minutes, we'll have a listen to it for those who are on Zoom as well. But for now, we conclude our service with the words of the priestly blessing in front of us on the screen. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. V'yasem lecha shalom. Amen. Amen. The Shabbat morning Kiddush is on page 566 in our Siddurim, page 566. We'll go to that page now, and I hope that you have been able to bring with you on your journey to the virtual synagogue some Kiddush wine and something also for Motzi in a moment. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, lazot et HaShabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti leolam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim v'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash. Al kein berach Adonai et yom hashabbat vayikadshehu, therefore the Eternal One blessed the Shabbat, the Sabbath day, and called it holy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim, everyone. And finally, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. And we're going to
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom to all who are following the stream, and wish you a good afternoon as we conclude.